unmuted. You got to unmute yourself.
Good start. Okay. My name is Ghostii. The G in Ghostii is spelled with a 6 and is spelled with 2 I's, so it's 6hostii. A little bit newer to this YouTube world and stuff. 28 years old, East Coast. Yeah.
Riveting backstory, Ghostii. Just riveting. Moving over to Rachel, same thing. Shout out your channel to everybody where they can find you, and tell us briefly a little bit about yourself.
I am Rachel Wilson. I'm an author, researcher, anti-feminist, patriarchist extraordinaire, shill for the patriarchy. I have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, Rachel Wilson. You can find my book on Amazon. It's called Occult Feminism, The Secret History of Women's Liberation. You can find a whole bunch more of my writing on rwilson.substack.com. And I'm a homeschooling mom and e-bimbo.
Okay. Well, thank you for that as well. So, as we launch into the debate, as agreed, backstage, Ghostii, I think you also go by Jane, correct?
Oh, yeah, you can call me Jane.
Yeah, so I think that, Jane, you're up first. You're going to have 7 minutes on the clock. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. So tonight we're talking about supposed occult feminism, a term coined by Rachel, as far as I know, and used to title her own book, insinuating deep historical ties between the occult and the birth of feminism since first wave through today. Rachel is correct that along with feminism, and during the periods of its waves, and most notably the first waves, came an uptick in esoteric interests, like most if not all other periods of radical change and liberation. To oversimplify, interest in the occult grew during these times. In the mid-1800s, during the Seneca Falls Convention, the first women's rights convention, America was experiencing an occult wave, we could say. The fact that women's suffrage and esoteric interest coincide at the same time together is not only completely logical, given the context of the time period and the recent history and current events, but could even be considered predictable. Maybe hindsight is 20/20, but my argument is this is a completely natural and logical occurrence. Whereas Rachel here has argued feminism was, or is, an astroturf movement, some type of completely unnatural movement forced into society by some evil globalist secret society type of enterprise. This is simply untrue, and ironically, I would argue that Rachel's own ideals and push for change stem from a globalist secret society type of movement with perhaps even ill intent. If it were up to Rachel, we would regress into a primal animalistic type society where physical force is used to rule and dictate rather than intellect, debate, and reasoning. The laws for the entire world would be based on a half-anonymously written ancient text about the conversation a schizophrenic man had with a burning bush that he probably lit himself. Now, this probably is coming off very condescending and ignorant, which I've done purposefully. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I have no ill opinions of devout Christians or any other religious people. Many of my family are strictly and even radically religious. I am personally not a follower of these more mainstream religions, but I am, according to the definition, religious, and at the very minimum, spiritual. However, I do not believe I know any more or less regarding the beyond and spiritual unknown than any one of any other religion, and I do not force my beliefs and current understandings onto others. And this seems to be the primary difference between Rachel and I. I leave room for error and change. Rachel assumingly believes life is set by the divine creation of God or Jesus Christ, and the best way to live is by following his rules and law. I believe morals are innate and come naturally from a conscious human experience, which includes things like empathy, fear, and love. So yes, while I completely disagree with Christianity's beliefs, I also don't believe Christians are devil worshippers. But many religious people, including Rachel, will say such things about religions that aren't their own, and specifically occult-associated religions. Similar to how Rachel wants to take back the word patriarchy and reassociate it with a new light and a positive spin, I want to do the same for religions or beliefs and spiritual paths like mine. The fundamentals of paganism, Wicca, spiritualism, and so many more are peaceful, positive, and share many of the same moral principles of Christianity, such as don't lie, cheat, or hurt people. They also do not believe in harming or hatred of men or the male essence. They only view male and female qualities as equally divine and important. My goal of this debate is to successfully debunk Rachel's theory that occult feminism is what occult feminism actually is, and explore the factors and events leading to this cohabitation of feminism and the occult. Sorry, I hate reading.
Okay, no problem. Before we launch in to Rachel's opening, just two quick things for the chat. One, if you leave a message as you're bored, mods will remove you from the chat so you can go be bored somewhere else, because I'm fucking bored of you, right? I'm bored of your stupid ass chats about how bored you are. Get the fuck out of my chat. How's that? How's that? Then I'm not bored anymore watching you get fucking banned. That makes me super happy. So there's that. That's house cleaning order number one. And then moving into house cleaning order number two. If you're so fucking stupid in the chat that you can't read and you ask what the debate topic is, might I direct you to on the front of the fucking thing you clicked on that says occult feminism as the debate topic. I just want to help all of you out there in Crucible Chatland. I wouldn't assume that you were that fucking stupid, but I think many of you might be. With that, I'll turn it over to Rachel. Go ahead. 7 minutes on the clock.
All right. So in Jane's opening, she kind of gave you her worldview and where she's coming from on this topic. And I will say that I do have a small following of witches and occultists of different varieties who actually love my work because they think that I am giving witchcraft and the occult its due and proper in propagating feminism and turning it into kind of the mainstream social order that it's been for at least the last 50 years now, I would say. So there is that. You could theoretically from that position look at what I do and say, yeah, you're right. But witchcraft and the occult was really instrumental in bringing egalitarianism and women's rights into the mainstream. And if you think that that's a good thing, then sure, you could say yay to the occult and to paganism and to various forms of witchcraft, who all, because they have a goddess worship element. This is a lot of the reason when she said she felt it was kind of inevitable. I would agree. When she said it's kind of a natural order of things, I actually say that in an academic article that I wrote, which I presented at a conference about the ties between paganism and feminism and how we're seeing this big pagan revival since the 70s in the West. And it kind of comes along with the feminist stuff because Christianity is a patriarchal religion. It literally means ruled by the father. And in Christianity, we do not have goddesses. We do have one woman who is venerated. That would be the Virgin Mary, the Theotokos, but she does not have a divine nature. She is a human and only has a human nature. So we venerate her as the highest of women. She's the Ark of the New Covenant. She is the Queen of Heaven, but she is not divine. She is not worshipped. She is only venerated and put, in a high place in the religion. Almost every other religion, except for the other Abrahamic religions, have some goddess worship element. So I would broadly, classify those as pagan or occultic, or, you could label them what you'd like, but that's generally what we're referring to here. And she was correct to say that in the 19th century, a lot of women who even said that they were Christians, I argue in my book that they were not, because they were generally Universalists or Unitarians. They did not adhere to the Nicene Creed or the traditional, definitions of Christianity at all. They kind of co-opted Christianity because they were in a Christian nation and had to kind of, do that to get by. But they openly declared Lucifer as their liberator. They saw him more as like a Gnostic version of Lucifer that liberated mankind and especially women. So whether feminism is good or bad, we could get into, but certainly the occult was and pagan religions were instrumental in this. And as far as like calling Christianity, a schizophrenic dude who was talking to a bush, Wicca is probably the most ridiculous and silly of all the occult religions. It was created in the 60s by Gerald Gardner, who was just a nudist who wanted to be able to touch asses and kind of get away with it. So he created a phony baloney modern version of witchcraft. So we could trade insults about which religion is sillier, but at least Christianity established a working social order that stabilized society for thousands of years. So I would agree that the occult was instrumental in it, but I think that was a bad thing. And I don't think that paganism or equality or feminism are natural whatsoever. It's kind of like, doesn't really matter if it's natural or not. That's naturalist fallacy. But even if it's natural, I don't think it's good. I don't think it works, and I don't think it's sustainable, and I do think it will come to an end. Feminism can't sustain itself. If you look at the situation we're in right now with birth rates and the collapse of the West and people not even being able to figure out how to date each other or get married anymore, I think we can say it's a fail, at least on that front, and we can go into more detail on that. But yeah, I would just say, yes, the occult was an element and it was instrumental in bringing feminism in, but I think that's a bad thing. And I think patriarchy is inevitable, it's inescapable, and it's the divine order that was designed by our creator.
All right. Thank you guys for the opening statements. I just want to let everybody in the chat know, if you want to bitch, this is the correct way to do it. So a $200 dono to kick off the stream. I'm bored. What's this debate about again? Clearly dunking on the moderator, making fun of the chat. I guess I deserve that. Appreciate the 200 kick things off. With that, we're going to start the open dialogue. About an hour 15 minutes. This will be a full running debate. Call-ins are welcome. We'll get to those in about an hour 15 minutes. And then from there, we'll also get into all of the super chats. Dono chat link is pinned at the top. If you want to send in Dono chat, those will get priority. Appreciate it very much. With that, the floor is open. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just don't see why. Like, I think a lot of these women during this time, from like reading their writings and stuff, they understand the natural order of men and women, like in a domestic sense, like men and women will fall into their places like domestically. But as far as like politically, I don't know why we need like a patriarchal society for that. And I don't think that like a lot of these feminists at the time were painted as like childless women or divorced or unmarried women somewhere, but many of them, especially a lot of the leaders of them, like Alice Paul and her husband started I can't think of the name of it right now, but one of the main like associations for women's rights and stuff. Yeah. So yeah. So why does the patriarchy have to be like a political structure? Like, because I'm pretty sure my belief is that, or from my understanding, your belief is that women don't have a place in politics and government and stuff.
Right. Well, if you think about it on a broad historical level, there's probably some sort of reason why we didn't have women asking to be in politics or demanding that they could vote until a little over 100 years ago, 150 years ago. One reason is you didn't have some idea of universal suffrage democracy. That's a very new idea. It's only a couple hundred years old. Prior to that, there was never this notion that every single person who lived in any given nation or kingdom deserved a say-so in how things were run. So to that end, men only got universal suffrage just shortly before women did. So nation states and democracies are new, male suffrage being universal is new, and female suffrage coming shortly after that is also new. So these are new ideas. You're kind of operating, it seems to me, off of an Americanist presupposition, kind of an Enlightenment presupposition that we are all equal and that everyone ought to have a say. So I would ask you, why is it that you think do you think everyone should have a say, and if so, why?
Yeah, I think everyone does deserve a say, especially if they're forcibly living under a society that dictates their world around them, the food they get, where they can work, how much they can pay for, social programs, stuff like that. As long as we're born into these societies and we don't have an option to, it's literally like illegal to live in the woods and make your own energy sources and your own water sources and stuff. So yeah, living off of your own energy is illegal, I'm pretty sure. There's like ways to get around it, but it's very hard and expensive. You have to like do it all yourself. So as long as we're like forced to live in these societies, I think everybody who is born into them should have a say.
So you think that simply existing is the criteria? You don't think there has to be any level of competency to understand even how things might be run or to be able to partake in those systems? It's just an opinion equal, I have an opinion, therefore I should have a vote, basically?
Yeah, the competency, if the competency comes into the people who are like making the laws and working within the structure, but the people who are still being affected by everything, like levels of competence or IQ or abilities or not, you're still contributing and playing a part into the society. So I think.
So my children help me with house chores and they bring the groceries in from the car and they do their own laundry now. They're old enough even to make a lot of their own food. Does that mean they should have a say in how the household is run though?
I mean, they have rights.
Do they? Children have rights?
Yeah, children do have rights. Of course they do.
Explain how that works.
If
my 12-year-old doesn't agree when I she says, "Mommy, I would like to walk down the road to my friend's house and stay the night," and I say, "No, you can't do that." She can exercise her right and well, "No, mother, I have rights. I'm going to do what I want. I will see you tomorrow."
If you were to do something abusive to enforce those rules, then your child would have a right of protection from you.
Okay, well,
but also minors are different. Minors are different. Like you're not a legal adult until you're 18.
Right, exactly. So we don't just say if you have an opinion, you can vote. We do right now at least have a couple of restrictions. You have to be a citizen. You have to be 21 years old. Now, prior to universal suffrage, there were greater restrictions on that. Do you think it's actually a better idea to let people who have no stake in the game, no skin in the game at all, people who cannot be tasked with defense of persons or property, people who will not be building or maintaining infrastructure, defending the borders, a number of other things that only men do. Do you think that those people should have equal say in how everything is run if they're literally not capable of doing the things that the people who actually run things do?
Yeah. I'm going to answer your question with a question pretty much, but like, are you saying that the only people who should have a say in society are the people who maintain and run infrastructure? Well, literally the infrastructure that maintains the society that everybody is contributing to.
But everybody doesn't contribute to it. And if it were up to me, I don't believe in universal suffrage democracy at all. I think democracy is one of the worst forms of government. I think it's one of the most tyrannical. I think that universal democracy is you get the mob together and they get to decide to rob people who have things that they don't have, but they want, right? Basically. So no, I don't think democracy is fair. I don't think it's even-handed or egalitarianistic, but this idea that everyone is equal or should be equal, you got to justify that for me first, because I don't see that people are equal, nor do I see why they should be considered equal when they're clearly not. Do you think that, let's take two multi-billionaires, right? Really rich people. Let's think about maybe Kim Kardashian and Elon Musk. Do you think that those people contribute equally to the world?
While I don't hold Kim Kardashian's, value of contribution as high as Elon Musk's, I do think she has enough influence to be contributing to the society. Yeah, I think what Elon Musk is doing is more important and valuable, but we can't deny that Kim Kardashian has a huge influence on society, on people in it.
She does have a huge influence, but I would argue it's not a very good influence. You could see that this huge rise in plastic surgery among young women is mostly due to the Kardashians. So we have girls who are 18, 19, 20 years old getting dangerous, risky plastic surgery so that they can look like these ultra famous bimbo billionaires. I think that's stupid. But to look at like female contributions to society and say that they're on par with the men who literally have created the modern world is laughable. And here's why. You and I wouldn't be here right now talking on this live stream if it weren't for men. Women did not design all the technology that allows this to happen. They weren't launching satellites and, you know, developing telecommunications.
Frequency hopping was invented by a woman, which led to Bluetooth and Wi-Fi.
An exaggeration, the Hedy Lamarr thing.
Grace Hopper.
Hedy Lamarr invented Wi-Fi. No, she didn't.
Grace Hopper also invented computer language, computer programming, all this stuff. The dishwasher was invented by a woman. Kevlar, like there's a bunch of women
are the dishwasher.
Also, do you not think that being mothers and wives in society is an important role?
Of course it is. It's the most important role women can have, but it doesn't mean that we are fit to rule. It doesn't mean that we are fit to govern. In fact, I think those things are quite a bit antagonistic toward each other because the requirements are so different, and men and women are ontologically different. So the qualities that make you a good mother would not be the same qualities that would make you a good ruler. And women tend to be overall very irrational and illogical. But let's go back to the women invented cool stuff thing. Even if some women invented some things, if you believe that like a handful of women of color did the math that put man on the moon by hand, first of all, you're ridiculous. But let's just say that that's true. Who built the damn rockets? Like, who lays the concrete? Who are the people do you know what power linemen do? Do you know what they have to do when they climb power poles and like actually put up cables that cross huge canyons and rivers and mountains and dangerous areas? How dangerous those jobs are. There's a reason why still to this day, the vast majority of infrastructure jobs are done by men. It's because women physically cannot do them to a huge degree. And even the ones who theoretically could don't want to because it's dangerous and it's dirty and it's really difficult. This is why we see women doing the same shit they did 100 years ago. They're not going into STEM, no matter how much we push them into STEM. Women don't want to do STEM. They like people. They like to be creative. You know, like women have their things. Women can do cool things. I do cool things. You do cool things. We might be very talented people. That doesn't mean we're fit to rule. It doesn't mean we're fit to build. And if we don't build and maintain society, I don't see why we should have an equal say. Maybe we should have a say in as much as women did before suffrage. So before suffrage, there were women's groups that were influential. And actually, those women were anti-suffragists. They did not want to vote because they said, we will lose our moral neutrality that we have since we're not just another voting bloc. We're not just another lobbying group. We're not politicized. So if we go to lawmakers and we say, look, we need more clean, safe parks, or we need better school programs, whatever it is they're asking for, they were asking from a position of like moral high ground, right? So it's not that women can't maybe have influence. It's not that maybe men won't decide to listen to women when women are being wise or something. That's up to them and their judgment. Doesn't mean that they are automatically entitled to have authority over men when they cannot back that authority up with anything.
Well, okay. So first of all, in this patriarchal society, like the one that we're still, I guess, in a patriarchy, you could say, but like pre-suffrage, the society, all these men that you're talking about that like work in the coal mines and stuff, they weren't the men that had much of a say anyways. It was always the wealthy men who weren't doing these jobs. So there's a natural hierarchy among men, yeah. So then why are you arguing? So are you saying that we should reverse it and those are the guys who can like lift things? No, I'm glad you asked. So I would say that the way things were for all of human history until 100 years ago was just fine. There's no system that's perfect because power can always be abused by anyone, regardless of if they're male or female. So that's going to be a thing no matter who's in power. We have that right now. My God, like the government we have right now is arguably the most corrupt that's
probably ever existed, or it's at least way up there, right? So democracy doesn't ensure that you're not going to have tyranny or abuse of power. Neither does putting women in charge. Neither would putting coal miners in charge. There is a natural hierarchy that exists among males, and that's for men to hash out. Now, in a Christian patriarchal order, the church informs who is in charge. The church is part of, influencing and lawmaking and things like that. So you at least had some sort of moral body informing who was in charge. In a secular society, you don't even have that, which is why we have, secular humanists arguing to abolish age of consent laws and lobbying for the trans LGBT stuff all the time. So what I would say is there's been a hierarchy that was in existence. We had a balance of power prior to feminism. Because of the Industrial Revolution, creating this industrial world you and I live in, that world gives women like you this illusion, this idea that I'm just like a man. I can do anything a man can do. I'm just as capable as he is. But as they always say, there's no such thing as a feminist in a house fire, right? When the shit hits the fan, when stuff gets serious and lives are on the line, we don't go, somebody call the feminists. There's a flood. We have to save the children from the burning building. Someone call the feminists. That's not what happens. So men are still the ones who make this world that allows you to think that you're equal with them.
I agree. Men and women are different. I don't think people are equal. I don't think anybody is equal. And I don't think gender is much more of a determining factor between differences than any other thing is. Like in brain research, the differences between a male and a female brain.
Hang on, stop. We need to tie this back to the topic at hand, which is occult feminism.
Okay.
If this topic relates to occult feminism, that's fine, as long as you can tie the needle back in. But right now, we're moving way off course. I need to tie it back to the topic, which is feminism and the occult.
Okay. So for many of the anti-suffragists were lobbyists. Wait, does this tie it back to the occult?
Yeah, so since you were the challenger and you said I was kind of misrepresenting the occult, what do you think it is I got wrong? Or where am I misrepresenting? Where am I full of shit on this topic?
Okay, so like it's just the light you're presenting it in. Like you are presenting it as if it's some like I said, this like astroturf movement that it sounds like you're kind of making it a very conspiratorial view, like it was like pushed in society purposefully by these evil entities that are trying to like bring Satan. I feel like you're like making it a war between like Satan and God, and these Satanists are trying to push feminism to like push the church out of society. Am I right about that at all?
Yeah, well, the reason I say that is because not only do I believe that, but a lot of the really influential feminists believe that. So like Zuzana Budapest, who's a witch who came from Hungary in the 1950s to the United States and started one of the first legal female witch covens, the Susan B. Anthony Coven #1. She actually went to court in San Francisco and under the Religious Freedom Act, had them make Wicca an official protected religion under the Constitution, and she kind of bragged about being able to do that, pervert the laws of America in order to make witchcraft legal again, which it never had been here. And she said that feminism is simply the political arm of a greater spiritual war. She saw it as witchcraft is good, paganism is good, it's these evil Christians oppressing the women and they're bad. And this is where the idea comes from. This is why Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Matilda Joslyn Gage, and a couple dozen other women in 1895 rewrote the Bible from a feminist perspective. And some of these women identified as Christian. Now, again, I will say they weren't, because some of them were lesbian female pastors. Yes, they had those in 1895, believe it or not. They got kind of kicked out of everywhere and had to make their own church, but they were fine with that. And Protestantism allows such a thing. So they did that, and they rewrote the Bible from a feminist, vengeful goddess type of a perspective, where they took all the patriarchal stuff out that they didn't like. And Katie Stanton herself said in the preface, she does not believe any man ever talked to God. She doesn't believe the Bible is divinely inspired. And she basically thinks Christianity is bullshit, but it's too powerful. Too many people believe in it. So we'll just usurp it instead. We will just pervert Christianity and use it to argue for egalitarian principles. And that's exactly what they did. Very sneaky, very Luciferian to do, but yes, they believed it was a spiritual battle. They thought this was not merely political. They thought the political aspect was just how you get it in there, how you invert the societal order, and they were correct. So I think is the difference just that you think that's a good thing and I think it's a bad thing?
I'm sorry, could you ask that last question again?
So you said that you think that I'm incorrectly framing this as a spiritual battle, and I'm telling you the reason I'm framing it that way is because the feminists themselves in their own writing framed it that way.
But it's not, I don't think it was a spiritual battle. I think it was a political battle that they could literally only use, the only path to the political battle was through spiritualism, because all other mainstream religions didn't give women a voice. So the only religions that were giving women a voice and were allowing women to play a part in the church and have give sermons and stuff was through occult religions. And when people started seeing that and spiritualism had an uptick, it was just natural.
Let her finish her point. Let her finish her point, Rachel. Go ahead.
Sure.
It was only a natural way for women to start having a place. And these things, during the spiritualism kind of, when spiritualism happened, in the mid 1800s, during the same time as the women's convention and stuff, there was a bunch of mediums and seances going on. But this was at the same time that electricity was invented. The telegram was just invented. These things was not. It doesn't seem so unfathomable all of a sudden. And then people were losing people in the Civil War. There was such high mortality rates for infants and deaths for children and stuff. So it wasn't this evil. It wasn't viewed as this evil satanic thing that was happening. But it did give women a voice, and through that pathway, feminism and the occult kind of grew together. But it wasn't this evil spiritual political battle thing.
Okay, well, first of all, let's debunk this idea of women didn't have a voice. The only reason you're saying that is because it's propaganda that you've heard repeated over and over and over through your life. Women didn't have a voice. Yes, they had a voice. They didn't have power. Wait. Now it's my turn. They didn't have power. They definitely had a voice. They always had a voice. Women were always important and influential and had all kinds of things. In fact, Susan B. Anthony herself, in the History of Women's Suffrage, which is her giant history of her work, she said, and so did Stanton in her own writing, they both said the reason they couldn't get women in on feminism, because I don't know if you're aware, but it was extremely unpopular at the turn of the century. Late 1800s, early 1900s, it wasn't even popular until the 60s. Women were very much against women's liberation. Only about 4% of women who were polled at the time prior to suffrage wanted anything to do with suffrage. And Stanton and Anthony said the reason we can't get women on board is because they have everything they want. They can go to school if they want to go to school. They're allowed to work outside the house, but who wants to do that when you can just have your husband go work and you get to stay home and be a homemaker? You get to partake in your church life, your community life, raise your children together with your sisters and cousins. They have a lot of privileges and protections that they don't want to lose. And Stanton and Anthony basically thought, too bad. You're going to have to suck it up because we want power. So this was not about women didn't have a voice and they just wanted us, and we just want to contribute. We're not allowed to contribute. That's not what it was. They were always allowed to contribute. They always had a voice. This was about power. This was about women wanting to take more power from men. And the reason that's wrong and the reason that's bad is because there was a natural balance of power built in prior to women's lib. So if you look at genetic studies historically, all of us sitting here have twice as many female ancestors as we have male ancestors. This means that historically, only about 40% of men have ever gotten the chance to reproduce, and about 80% of women who've ever existed have gotten a chance to reproduce. The reason is, as a woman, the only thing you need to do to be able to pass on your genetic material is be fertile. That's it. If you're a fertile woman and you're capable of having babies, some man somewhere is going to come along and fertilize you. You don't have to be hot. You don't have to be talented. You don't have to provide value. You don't have to be special in any way. You just got to drop eggs. Okay? Not the same for men historically. Most men died in dangerous jobs, were put on the front lines of battle and ended up cannon fodder, or just were rejected by women wholesale because maybe they didn't make enough money to support a family. Maybe they didn't have enough social standing. It's even more brutal now that women have all the power. So what happened when we had women's liberation is that this natural balance of power where women have this tremendous power in their sexuality, their fertility, and their influence on men because of those things. Now they also have all the financial power, half the political power, all the marketing power. Like 80% of every consumer dollar is spent by a woman. Women have tremendous power, and what has happened is it throws the balance off. So now we have women who have unearned power in huge amounts, and men are still tasked with dying to protect the country, being the heroes who have to save everybody anytime there's a flood or a fire or a natural disaster. If there's a city burning down, male cops are the ones that have to go in there with batons and tasers, not the female cops. We've all seen the videos of female cops. So this took a natural power balance and threw it out of whack. And it was done in a very sneaky, subversive sort of way. And they're very proud of that. And they tell you that in their own writings. And they did see it as a spiritual battle. So if it was just a natural thing that was running its course, you wouldn't have needed the CIA to push it through Gloria Steinem and Ms. Magazine. You wouldn't have needed the CIA to create the Congress for Cultural Freedom to push these kind of values into the culture. They wouldn't have sent Steinem to India, to Europe to try to push this on people, okay? If it was just naturally happening as a grassroots movement that everybody thought was great, that wouldn't have been necessary. You also wouldn't have had to have, suffragettes firebombing businesses, bombing postal buildings, smashing storefront windows.
That's just how progress and revolution happen.
And revolution is evil. Revolution is not inherently good. That's an Enlightenment idea that this perpetual revolution is a good thing. Tell me why violent revolution is good for everyone. Tell me why.
Oh my God, there's so much. Okay, I don't know why you keep downplaying women's roles in society. Just overall, because we're not.
I keep saying that women had plenty of power.
Let her make her points,
society.
Rachel. Let her make her points.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Just because women are not strong does not mean we do not contribute to the society, and have equal logistical thinking and creative thinking power and progress, like new ideas that can progress the society. I think that women's opinions and ideas are very valuable along with everybody else. And that's why we have a democracy, so that there's no just small group of people dictating all of these laws and rules for people. We can vote together. So if somebody has an idiotic idea, it's not going to make it very far, because by the masses, we're all going to be able to vote and debate and choose which ideas we think are going to be best for our own society. Whereas if we go back to this, where we just let the strongest men hash it out and fight to the death over it, we're not going to get very far. It's not going to be the best for the masses of people. And we also have here's a quote from Katie Stanton. Because men and women are the complement of one another, we need women's thought in national affairs to make a safe and stable government. The whole point was that once a woman got married, once she was married, she was basically absolved into her husband. So yeah, she could work outside of the house, but her wages would go to her husband. She couldn't sign a contract.
Right.
She would be paying property taxes, and then none of those laws would be she couldn't vote for those laws for the taxes that she's paying towards. So these are all there, and there's many other more. It's on the Declaration of Sentiments, resolutions. I think there was 14 of them or 18 of them. that they listed that these women were fighting for. That it's not like, also many of the anti-suffragists, a lot of them ended up changing to be suffragists over time because they realized that the federal government wasn't just playing a role in international affairs and like war anymore. They had, because a lot of women, so a lot of the anti-suffragists, I believe they wanted to leave the vote, the women voting up to the states. And some of the states did allow women to vote. And the big thing was to make it a federal law, though. And over time, like another reason too was like they didn't want Black people to vote. If we gave women the vote, then we would give Black people the vote and Black women the vote too. So I don't know. I just feel like you're twisting all of these things to make them very evil when they're not.
Okay, well, let's talk first about me downplaying women's roles. I'm actually arguing the opposite. I'm saying women were already very important and they had plenty of influence and they were held in very high regard and they were very well respected. They were important. They had plenty. They didn't feel like they didn't have a voice. There's an interview with my 98-year-old grandmother on my YouTube where I ask her, did you and your sisters and friends feel like inferior citizens growing up in the 20s and 30s? And she said, no, we didn't have like any such concept at all. But that aside, what happened is women had plenty. Women had privilege, they had protection, they had a voice, they had influence, they had their own spheres of society that they were very much in control of. But that wasn't enough, okay? That just wasn't enough. So the power-hungry, antisocial types. So there's such a thing as witch physiognomy. Professor Edward Dutton's been on my channel to talk about this in his anthropological research, and they found that, you know, when they do studies going back through the Middle Ages, that the women who tended to be witches and also the women who tended to be feminists and suffragists. This is why all the suffrage posters where they're making fun of the suffragettes, it's some old crony type of woman with a hideous face. Those were the women who tended to be witches and feminists. Why? Because the pretty girls obviously get picked first to be wives. It's natural. You know, women like tall, handsome men. Men like svelte, curvy, young, fertile women. Okay. So if you're this hideous woman who doesn't get picked and you're now in your 50s or 60s and you feel like you aren't noticed by society, you feel like you're not prized by men, you become a man-hating feminist. And so you want power. You want to take some of that power that the men have, because the influence you could have as a woman to raise children, help run the community, run the hospitals, do the elder care, the child care, all these other sort of social functions that women were very instrumental in. Women could also own schools and orphanages and taverns. Most of the taverns back in the day and the pubs were owned by women. So women had plenty, but it was the malcontent, outcast, antisocial women who wanted more. So they were like, no, I want equal political power and I want equal legal power. So if women are so great and if women are just doing such amazing things, do you think then that the reason we had a patriarchy for so long is because maybe women can't rule kingdoms, women can't run nations, women can't build infrastructure? Or do you think, because you think I'm the conspiracy theorist, I think it's you. I think you think there was a conspiracy all throughout history where the men like get taken into a secret class and they're like, listen, boys, we got to keep these women down. Make sure that your boot is planted squarely on the throat of every woman around you and don't let her have a say-so in anything and don't let her get any power because then you can't use her for a sex puppet. Is that what happened? Like, how did we have patriarchy for so long?
No, it's because as society, like we progressed. We went from freaking cavemen where we were ruling and battling with, you know, fists, and then we had swords and stuff, and then we could talk, and like we just progressed. So of course, like we're gonna start off as other animalistic societies where we use force and patriarchies to rule until we start getting more intellectual and consciousness, and then we start including everybody. And like this is literally just the way of progress. And because people have only been around like what 30,000-40,000 years or something like that, or 60,000 years, I don't know, but not a very long time. So Yeah, that's why we're only getting here now. But it's just natural progression. Every society has led this way. The only country in the world where women can't vote is Vatican City. So like, why don't you just move there? Like, instead of,
Well, I'm
dealing
an
with
Orthodox Christian. I'm not going to live in the Vatican, but progress toward what?
progress towards
Progress toward what?
a better society for all beings, all people.
Better according to what standard?
To the majority, to the masses of people, not just the elite, not just the wealthy people.
How is it better now than it was, say, 500 years ago for the average person?
Okay, well, first of all, like you mentioned earlier, you were talking about men's rates and passing on their seed or whatever. More men today have been able to make children. Yes,
Nope.
it's the highest numbers in history. More men today are having children than before.
It's still, well, not proportionally, like not per capita. So still, I think it's only about 40% of men actually get to have kids in, like, worldwide. It's still really low. It's still way less than women. And guess why? Women don't, they only pick the top 10% of men, and if they can't get that, a lot of them just won't have babies. And even if they do, a lot of them still won't have babies. The birth rates are terrible. But progress towards what? So when you say everything's getting better, how is it better? Because in 1960, only 5% of children were born out of wedlock, and now it's 41% of children that are born out of wedlock. It used to be almost everyone had their mom and their dad at home. Now that's like becoming pretty rare. Women, 26% of American women are on at least one prescription psychiatric drug. Alcoholism among women is the highest we've ever seen it. We keep hearing from the left about how, wealth inequality is getting worse, right? And when you said, like, oh, well, it's not caveman days, we don't have to worry about force anymore, that's baloney. That only comes from a woman in a first world country who's lived a fairly pampered life, historically.
No,
Because
I know force exists.
Gaza, if you go right now to Gaza or Ukraine, they will tell you that force is very much still on
I know force exists.
Thing.
But it's a better civilization to fight with intellect and not with bombs and swords and guns.
But we don't. That's what I'm saying. We do fight. Well, if you actually look, there's been more war. There's been more war and more deaths from war in the past 100 years than like the rest of history. It's insane. There's this great video on YouTube that will show you.
Where are those wars happening? In patriarchal societies?
World War I? Yeah, but by the way, if you're suggesting that women are less warlike, you would be wrong, because they've done analyses of monarchs throughout history, and they found that queens and female monarchs actually are more likely to go to war than men are.
I don't think women are more or less likely to wage war or more or less likely to be violent against each other. I think women are just as violent as men are, and if they had equal strength as men, I think they would be committing the same amount of violent crimes and doing the same amount of, evil, physical, violent acts. So I'm not arguing with you there. I just, let me see if I can tie this back in. I don't think.
How would we be better if we were in a pagan society then? If we were all, are you a Wiccan? I think you said.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't really have an exact name, but so that's what I most associate with, I guess, is Wiccan. But well, that's the thing. I don't want a Wiccan society. I don't want a society that's ruled by any one thing. I just want people to be able to be free to believe what they want and not have to force other beliefs upon each other and be fine with that.
That's a very adorable story from a very naive young lady. But how are we going to actually run the world? Because you realize that power is a thing, right? So you can't just go, we should just all be nice and we should just all share and just everybody should get whatever they want. That is like kindergarten.
What do you think the reason for these wars is because religion is trying to rule society? That's the reason for most of these wars. So if we just stop, if we actually separated.
You think Vietnam was about that? Do you think World War II was about that? How about World War I? How about all of the atrocities of Soviet communism, where they abolished the church and had government enforced atheism? What
Yeah,
about Maoist China, where there was no religious war whatsoever and there was like 20 million people died?
there's
So
still
no,
going. Okay, there can
it's
still be
not the
wars,
religious
but
wars that are killing everyone.
many of the fundamental like causes of these wars and tensions between countries is because of religious beliefs and just countries trying to be like, hey, my way is the best and get out of here. It's just like all this like egotistical just nonsense to me. So in
So
a
if we
world,
all worship Mother Earth and we just like smoke some weed or
if we're
whatever,
all
like there won't be
accepting,
war.
there might be war. There's probably still going to be conflict. Yes, probably. But the ideal would for there to be not would to progress to a society where we can like be accepting and live along each other. And yeah, that's very like idealistic and very like fantastical, whatever. But like that is the goal, and working towards that I don't think is a silly or stupid thing to work towards, even if it seems very out of reach right now.
So as a pagan, do you believe that there's good and evil in the world?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. What are you going to do about the problem of evil from a pagan worldview?
We try to get to the core of it, the core cause of it, and treat it.
And what is the core cause of evil?
I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of different causes, but one cause is unacceptance and not understanding of neighbors and each other, and like egos, strong egos, believing that like I'm the best and I'm the only and right way, and I need to change everybody else, and I can't live with people who don't agree with me. I think that's one of the probably.
So if you and I don't agree on what's evil, so if you sound like very libertarian too, are you like, do you identify as like libertarian or do you identify as a progressive?
I don't really know. I feel like I'm like center left.
Okay. So you don't think that the progressive left believes in using force to enforce their version of morality?
So I don't think that violence is completely useless. I'm like typically against it, but I think there's still use for it when necessary, like when fighting evil per se. But that's the hard thing too, is like defining what's evil and what, because something that's evil to somebody, like for example, like 9/11 seems like a pretty evil thing, but they thought they were doing the right thing by trying to like get rid of Western society. So they thought that was like a positive.
Okay, we're not going to get into any of that. You can use any analogy on planet Earth, but let's not get into that one, okay?
Okay, sorry. But like my point is like the perspective of what's evil and what's good, what's right and wrong is going to be different for everybody. So my belief system would be like, my ideal world would be to do, I guess it's like a consequentialist or something. It's like to do what doesn't hurt other people, as long as you're not doing anything that harms or prevents other people from bettering themselves and living an okay life, then that's like the ideal.
Well, but anytime you have two consciousnesses coming into contact with each other, and anytime there's a disagreement about what is evil, one's going to do something, the other one's going to do something. So this idea that you can like get rid of power struggles, that you can eliminate this sort of thing is ridiculous. And I mean, I don't know if Andrew wants this to devolve into like a meta conversation about morality and how we determine good from evil, but I guess I would ask it this way. Do you think pagan societies were more peaceful and less violent? Do you think pagan societies were more moral than Christian societies?
Back in the day, probably not, because they came from like the like Nordics and the Vikings.
Well, the Romans,
like, super,
even, right?
Yeah, the Vikings were very like violent and like did some terrible shit. But I would say today, pagans like overall like are very, very peaceful people. Yeah, like most Christian people are too. But when we have people in power that are trying to dictate society with these religions and telling people to live this way, it causes a lot of tension.
Well, let me guess.
There's
I'm
more
just going to take a wild stab. I'm going to take a wild stab here, because it seems to me that the main differences there would be is stuff like feminism and LGBTQ rights. other than that, I can't think of what Christians are doing to non-Christians that you would object to, unless there's something I'm missing.
Christians are doing to non-Christians.
Yeah, like what beliefs am I as a Christian pushing onto people that you think is harmful?
Abortion rights, probably. Yeah, love, who can get married. Yeah, and then women's roles in society. I'd say that's like a good amount of shit.
Well, the reason that you say that is because you're presupposing a whole bunch of bullshit that you can't back up. So, for instance, you're presupposing that there is a right to fetus deletus, or that isn't murder. Very new idea, not a Christian idea. We could argue about that, but again, that turned into another debate. You're also presupposing that homosexuality is about love. I don't think that it is at all. I think it's about sexual perversion. I don't think that just because you're fucking somebody has anything to do with you loving them, and I don't think it means you can make a family out of a same-sex sexual relationship. So you're just operating off of a bunch of propaganda that you've heard, like love is love and women need a voice and these like meaningless platitudes. And if I asked you to justify any of it, I highly doubt that you could. So like,
I wouldn't have to, though. I don't have to. You're the one trying to say that it shouldn't be legal, and it isn't this, it isn't that, and it shouldn't exist. So I don't have to justify it. I'm letting people do what they want because they're not hurting other people as long as they're two consenting adults, whereas you're trying to prevent people from doing something.
Well, Andrew, do you want us to get into that then, or do you want us to get into these topics?
It seems that it does seem like it's perhaps foundational to the argument. Okay. So what is asked is, what is it that Christians are doing wrong? Rachel's assertion is that they're pushing against LGBTQ rights, things like this. This seems to be the crux of why Jane thinks that paganism is superior, at least in modernity. So I do think that, I've been allowing it because it does seem pertinent to the argument.
Okay, then I just wanted to ask before I went with a line of questioning that wasn't related.
Occult pushed, perhaps.
Yeah, I suppose it is. So, so the idea that like I can do what I want as long as I don't hurt anybody else. Well, first of all, how do you know that those things aren't harming anybody else? So like gay pride parades all over the place, you think that's not harmful to Christians? Or is it just that it can be harmful to Christians but not everyone else? If you agree with it, it wouldn't be harmful. But like from my perspective, that stuff is harmful as shit. And killing children in the womb is extremely harmful to unborn children. So like, which one do you want to go with first? You want to go with the abortion stuff? You want to go with since we're in Pride Month, maybe we should go with how homosexuality isn't hurting anyone?
Okay, I never said it's not hurting anybody, but just because some parts of something might hurt some people doesn't mean that we should just make it completely illegal for everybody, right? Like,
so where's the line then? How do you know when you should legislate morality? By the way, from my perspective, most laws, maybe not really minor things like a traffic law or something, but most laws are based on the Justinian Code, which is based on the 10 Commandments, and it's a moral imperative, right? Laws enforce morality. That's what they're there for. Like, for instance, from your worldview, is there a reason why two sisters can't have a lesbian relationship and get married? Why can't they do that?
Two biological sisters?
Yeah.
Because they're family, and typically family, I don't know. It's just morally wrong. That's why, I believe morals
are. But why? No, you can't just say it's just morally wrong. You have to tell me why it's morally wrong, because love is love, right? Who are you to tell them they're not hurting you? They're not hurting anyone else. They're just in love.
I mean, to be honest, it's pretty weird, but they are lesbians and they can't have children and hurt anybody else. So I guess, you do you. But if it were a brother and sister and they were to try to have children, then that would hurt the children because it's going to mess up, the DNA.
Okay. But we're cool with the lesbian sisters getting married because they're not hurting anyone and they can't have, messed up looking kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it is kind of weird, isn't it? So it seems like with your worldview, we're going to get a lot of weird stuff. What
But
about...
how often is that happening? That's not happening like all the
That
time.
doesn't matter. I'm testing your logic. You're
Okay.
saying we should run society based on these principles. So we have to test those principles and see what happens if we're about to implement them. So, like, there was just a viral video online last week of a man in a neighborhood who was on his own private property exposing himself to children that were walking by. And a dad called the police, and the police came to the dad's door and said, "Hey, he's on his private property. He's not hurting anyone. Just tell your kids not to look." Is that cool too?
No, he is hurting those. He is hurting those kids. That's going to mess them up by seeing that. Well, it depends how he's showing himself, because I personally believe that we over-sexualize human bodies. Like, I'm for nudist beaches and stuff. If he is showing...
Now we know why she's a Wiccan. She wants to grab butts with Gerald Gardner.
No, I'm not trying to grab people's butts, but I think it's harmful the way that we over-sexualize natural bodies. So if he was to show himself to these kids and he's getting off on it and his penis is clearly like get in there, like, that's going to be bad, and that's we shouldn't allow that at all.
So as long as it's soft.
If he's just naked on his front lawn,
fine.
just sitting in a lawn chair with a beer, I don't think there's a problem with that, personally.
Okay, cool. So sisters can get married, and the old guys can expose themselves to the neighborhood as long as they're chilling in a chair with a beer and it stays soft. Okay, we're making some progress. And then, so if you think that democracy is like this highest value and that we should all have a say, what do you think about all the times that they put to a vote? Like in California, there was a big referendum on gay marriage and it got voted down, and they just shoved it through anyway. They went to the Supreme Court, and the powerful elites, shoved that through and made it a federal law. So why wasn't democracy good enough in that case? If the people didn't want it.
Which state was this?
California.
I don't know. I think
it was 2000. Wasn't that like 2010? I want to say somewhere. It was the Obama administration that they had a referendum in California, and they said no to gay marriage, and then the Obama administration just pushed it through the Supreme Court instead.
I guess the people didn't agree with it, and I don't know. Gay marriage is a federal law now, right? You can federally...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because they pushed it through the Supreme Court. They ignored the will of the people. They said, screw your democracy, we're going to shove this pride flag right down your throat.
Because it doesn't hurt it doesn't hurt anybody else. So.
Oh, so really it's not democracy. So really everyone doesn't get a say. It's just if the powerful elite want to give you gay marriage, which you like, that's fine in that case. It's only democracy when it's stuff that Jane likes.
Well, no, it's democracy when it's like if they were to start taking firearms away from people, if they were to start like federally banning that. Each state has its own firearm rules and regulations and stuff, and we can move to the state that we agree with or whatever. But if they were to federally take that away, now that's going to affect everybody.
So are you...
But gay marriage then? Gay marriage doesn't like cause people to like die or not be able to protect themselves, or like essential parts of living.
Yeah, but that wasn't your original principle. You weren't saying as long as but all that aside, so like, let me ask you another question. How did you feel about the lockdowns? Now we can't use the C word, but we can say lockdowns. Okay. How did you feel about lockdowns?
So I've never been jabbed. I was laid off twice because I decided not to do that. I think the initial lockdowns were pretty appropriate, and the mask wearing and social distancing, I think that was like pretty fair for a pretty like unknown situation that was happening at the time. I do think many of the rules ended up being very stupid and just didn't make sense. So I had an issue with that. I would have had an issue with mandates for them.
Okay, fair enough. What if we held a vote in what? You don't have to tell me what state you're in if you don't want to, but like...
That's fine. I'm in Philly, PA.
Okay. So what if Pennsylvania has a referendum on abortion rights and they say no abortion? What if the people decide they don't want abortion rights?
Well, I think that would be unjust.
Okay, so it's definitely not democracy. It's definitely not consensus. It's definitely not everyone gets a say. It's more a libertarian consequentialism where it's like, if you can't prove direct harm, I think this should be legal.
Pretty much. Yeah. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Okay. So we'll just, I don't think we need to keep going down that road because we already established that in Jane's world, you're going to have old dudes chilling naked on the lawn in front of the kids. And as long as it stays soft, we don't have a problem. And the lesbian sisters can get married and all of that. So
I just don't think we should shame our bodies. Yeah, I think that's another part of like the occult and stuff that is seen as like, oh, free love, and it's so evil, and it's just to like empower women through sex and stuff. Like, first of all, none of like, I don't know, none of that is seen. Like Wicca and paganism, they view the masculine and feminine as equal. They rule separate times of the 6 months of the year. They're equals. It's not like women like hating men. It's all toxic masculinity and stuff. I'm sure there's some radical feminists and radical witches and stuff who do that, but I would argue that they're not true. They don't follow the true like path, and they're not reading that.
So Alexandra Kollontai in Russia, and here in the United States we had Victoria Woodhull, both advocates of free love in the late 1800s. Both in their writings and their speeches said that one of the reasons they were such big supporters of free love is because they were also marriage abolitionists. And they did blatantly say we should get rid of the nuclear family because it's patriarchal and it opposes women's rights. Do you agree with them about that?
No, but probably at the time it probably fit the context at the time, because many of these women did believe that once you were married, you were basically dead. You were basically absolved into your husband, and you had no rights anymore if you were married. So that's why I think it's funny too. You were saying it was just like these lower class like women the lower class women actually had more equal rights.
No, not lower class. It wasn't lower class. Kollontai was actually like upper class.
Yeah, it was the more privileged women that had
ugly women. It's a physiognomy thing for the most part. It's the ugly chicks that couldn't get a man tended to be witches. They tended to become antisocial because they felt like this societal order benefits most women, but not me because I'm a 2, right? Even the 4s are getting husbands, but I'm a 2, so I'm screwed. So screw this whole system. And they become very antisocial. They become very anti-family, anti-marriage because it doesn't benefit them. They're the few that feel left out. Now, there were things for them to do. They could be nuns. They could run orphanages. They could have a pub. They could become, authors. A lot of them were. They could do other things, but they felt like marriage and family was bullshit because generally they were left out of it. It's like a pretty real phenomenon, the witch
most of these women had husbands and children, though.
Well, some of the prominent suffrage writers did, but not all of them. A lot of them didn't. Matilda Joslyn Gage, not so much. And she was actually the mother-in-law of L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz and gave us The Good Witch and the Bad Witch. That The Good Witch was inspired by her. She believed in, Native American style paganism and thought that Christianity was evil and wanted to destroy it and wanted to destroy the patriarchy. So she was like a very radical, like typical style witch, lived out in the woods, I think she was married for a time, but I don't remember for sure. All that aside, again, I don't see how this, like, we're going to all be pagans and let everybody do whatever they want, be naked.
I don't want everyone to be pagan, though. That's what I'm saying. I don't want.
Well, you don't want us to be. You don't want them to be Christian. You don't want them to be in the traditional religions because those are oppressive.
No. I don't think that. I'm fine with practicing your religion and having your beliefs as long as they are not affecting other people in a negative way and ruling people in politics and government. I don't think personal beliefs that literally nobody can prove should be dictating the laws of the land for the masses of people when nobody can agree on
what
them.
we're doing, what you and I are doing right now, we're having a debate, and the purpose of debate is we're trying to logically suss out a moral question, right? What we're discussing here boils down to a moral question. Do you believe there's an objective right and wrong, or do you think morality is subjective?
I don't think there's necessarily an objective right and wrong, but I do believe there are a fundamental objective set of morals. So
okay, where do those come from? Where do you get them from?
I think they're innate within humans, and they come from just a conscious experience that we have, that we grow, that comes from things like empathy, fear, love, anger. It's just things that are innate within us, in our conscious beings, that I don't think we need religion to have.
Well, clearly it's not. Clearly it's not innate, because if morality was innate, we wouldn't have so many disagreements on what's moral. We wouldn't have so many, like you said, oh, it's all war is just all these different people fighting over like what they think it should be and whose land it is and what religion they have. So clearly it can't be innate, because we would have a more universal morality. Now, the only religion that does have a universal morality is Christianity. Every other religion has more of either a relativism, where everything's kind of meaningless, or they have one set of morals for themselves and another set of morals for like other people groups. Christianity was actually, what do you mean how?
Can you explain how?
So, like Judaism, for example, has one set of rules of how you interact morally with other Jews, and they have a separate set of morals for how you interact with non-Jews. Hindus have a similar thing. Muslims have a similar thing, right? There's rules for us that we're supposed to follow, and then there's rules for other people that, you know, we think they should follow and dictate how we deal with them. And in a lot of these, like New Age and pagan and occult religions, it's very relativistic, where it's like, hey, like you said, you do you, bro. Like, what's right for me is what's right for me, and what's right for her is what's right for her. So it's very relative. The only religion that has like a universal morality is Christianity, and that's why the Christian empires were so stable, lasted so long, why the entire Western world bases its laws off of Christian ethics.
I think
it's the most stable thing.
I think you're conflating morals with values. Like morals with values. So I believe that we have innate morals within people. Like we don't need religion to realize that killing somebody is wrong. I don't think we need religion to tell us that killing somebody is wrong.
Because your pagan ancestors did not agree with you. Your pagan ancestors thought human sacrifice was totally valid and, in fact, necessary to pacify the gods.
That was a very primal civilization.
You are pulling from Christian ethics. You are borrowing Christian ethics. The idea that murder is universally wrong came from Christianity.
I'm pretty sure Christianity borrows a lot of pagan.
Really? Explain. You better back that up. You can't just say I kind of think it does. You gotta justify that with something.
Well, we have Ostera, Easter with the eggs. It comes from spring. All of a sudden,
no, that's
Christmas happens to be on December 25th. Yule.
Okay, I could debunk these if you want, but like no, in the first millennium of Christianity, I'm an Orthodox Christian. We're the OG Christians. We do not have Easter. We have Pascha. It's Passover. It's literally Passover. Okay. So the Easter Ishtar thing is a word concept fallacy that retards on the internet. Sorry, I didn't mean to say the R word. Ninnies on the internet came up with this idea, and it's these silly people who think that if two words from totally different languages sound similar, or they take place in a similar season, that they must be the same thing, or that there's this, that everything is borrowed. That's been debunked like a million times. This idea that Christianity took all this stuff and borrowed everything, we could get into that, but it's been debunked like thoroughly.
They did twist things. Huh? They did twist things. They did twist pagan gods, the horned god, into Satan and the devil, just because paganism's worshipped a horned god for the hunt, because animals
we do
horns,
believe
now
that
that's the devil.
We do believe that the gods of the nations are demons. It says that in at least 2 places in the Bible that I'm aware of, and I personally do believe that. I think that all these pagan gods are real spirits. I think that they're demons. But like you said, I guess you can't prove to me that the pagan gods are real, and I can't prove to you that the Christian God is real, but I can tell you that Christian morality is more moral than pagan morality, which included human sacrifice, it included sex rituals, it included temple prostitution, and all sorts of other horrors. Do you know what pagan tribes did when they would invade, foreign lands? It wasn't nice. They weren't fair. They didn't just invade and like throw flowers everywhere. They didn't invade neighboring nations and give them like, humanitarian rights. That's not how that went. And I still don't think that's how it would go.
What was that? What was that called? Inquisition or whatever? Like, or the fucking Christians
Catholic
into
Church,
Spain and all these like we can say all of these ancient religions. That's why I'm saying progression is the way to move forward. We shouldn't be regressing. Like we can.
Okay, but you just advocated for legal abortion, which is literal human sacrifice on a mass scale.
It's not human sacrifice, and most.
Are you saying unborn babies aren't humans?
They're not.
They're really humans. They're humans.
Maybe.
You're going to probably say they don't have personhood. You're going to go, but they don't have personhood. But it's definitely alive. Listen,
they're humans.
It's alive or you wouldn't have to kill it, and it's human or it wouldn't be in your body. It wouldn't be a human. What? So it's human life, and you want to kill it. So
nobody wants to get an abortion. Nobody wants to get abortions. Literally,
that's bullshit and lies.
An abortion.
That's a lie. That is just a lie. There are women at these protests screaming about how I have one on my TikTok, this girl screaming, I love killing babies. You have Gloria Steinem going, shout your abortion, and giving everybody the t-shirt. Yes, they want to get abortions. They love getting abortions. In fact, I did a whole show with my friend. Oh, okay, you got to just let me finish this and then I'll let you talk, I promise. I did a whole show with my friend David Patrick Harry from Church of the Eternal Logos, a 3-hour-long stream about modern pagans, okay? Modern pagan girls on TikTok, on websites, the native indigenous tribes here in the United States, pagan groups, Wiccan groups, Church of Satan groups, all these different occultic believers saying that abortion is a human sacrifice ritual to them on their own websites, okay? And this is not like one weird girl on TikTok. There are activist groups who say, you cannot take away this ritual. It's a religious ritual for us and should be protected under the Freedom of Religion Act.
Okay, if people... Do you think the majority of women who get abortions are doing it for a ritual?
It doesn't matter if it's the majority.
No, it does matter because there's also Christian people who fucking put black people and gay people like in nooses or they attack them or they shoot. Yeah, there was like that Christian man who went into a grocery store and killed a bunch of black people. And then there was some people gay people get attacked all the time by Christians.
There was just a trans school shooter.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. We don't have to. We shouldn't. What I'm saying is we can't argue with these exceptions to say that this is all bad. If people are using abortion for sacrifice, then sure, like that's wrong. We shouldn't do that. Just that would be my belief. But the majority of women aren't using abortions as sacrifices.
But what I'm telling you is that it is a historical tradition. So in this big project I did, it went through tribes in Australia and New Zealand, like primal tribes that are still there and still follow like the pagan religions they had, indigenous religions, all of the Mother Earth worshiper people. There are activist groups across the world who say, and this is something you can find in Aristotle writing about this in ancient Roman times, that it was used as a religious rite, that abortion historically throughout the pagan world is part of their like spiritual practice. And there are groups in the United States and in New Zealand right now lobbying their governments saying you cannot take this away because it should be covered under a religious spiritual practice. And they demonstrate the historicity of it in order to make their point. So you can say, well, but it's not everyone. But I'm telling you, the whole pagan ancient world pretty much thought that infant sacrifice and abortion was a religious ritual. And so I'm saying you don't have a morality that comes from paganism that you can say is better than Christian morality.
That's an ancient belief, though. That's what I'm saying.
It's a modern belief. The groups right now are saying this is part of our like rite of passage.
That's not
this is one of our spiritual rights. It doesn't matter if it's normative across the world, because 70% of the United States is Christian and most of the rest of them are atheist or agnostic. If all of you were pagan, you'd all say that. All of the witches, all of the pagans think that this sort of thing is a spiritually protected practice. There are girls on TikTok who will show you how to make an abortion altar and how to ritualize your abortion. I covered bunches of them. So maybe you don't, but it definitely exists and it's definitely prominent and it's part of their historic belief system.
I'm sure it exists, and we can find lunatics across all different types of any types of person. Any type of belief. There are fucking lunatics, and those are the people that, in my ideal world, the law would deter from allowing them to abuse and use. But women who just need an abortion, for the majority of women who get an abortion already have children, first of all. It's their first abortion. It's not 1 in 3 women that have abortions. That was a predicted estimate from like the 80s or the early 2000s or something like that. That I don't know why Pearl keeps spewing that over and over again. That's not a true fact. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think arguing with these extremes is reasonable, and most people don't want abortions.
My whole point is that they're not extremes, and by the way, we still have like the whole point of birth control was supposed to be we're going to eliminate the need for it, and that's not what happened. So when you sit here and tell me most women don't want to, I don't believe you. And they're marching and screaming and screeching saying they demand the right to do it. So I just don't believe you that they don't want to, because if just nobody wanted to, we went from safe, legal, and rare under the Clinton administration to shout your abortion, okay? So I don't believe you that they don't want to. That's number one. But number two, you still haven't demonstrated how Christian morality is worse than pagan morality, or how pagans have any sort of, like, it seems to be that you can just choose your own morality because you're like, well, I think it should be this, and maybe some pagans think that, and I don't really know what they thought before. And it's like, I'm still not understanding where you're coming from with this whole idea that like I'm misrepresenting the pagan world when I've done like massive amounts of study on it and written articles on it and done live streams on it. And I've got a freaking book I wrote about it. I'm very well aware of what pagan beliefs were and the goddess worship aspect of it and why it pushes feminism. And that, yes, it does push sexuality because that's the only innate power women have over men. Men have a monopoly on force. We have a monopoly on like sexual attraction. So, of course, that's why they had temple prostitution. That's why they had sex cults for their goddesses and things like this. So I'm still not understanding how I misrepresent the occult and its role in feminism, or how it's somehow like more moral to have pagan or occult feminism than it is to have a Christian patriarchy.
And like, I mean, I could read you like text. We have the Principles of Wiccan Belief from the Council of American Witches from April 1974. These are all completely peaceful. It's a list of 13 of like tenets, basically. There's nothing about hating men. In fact, one of them is the number 4th one. We conceive of the creative power in the universe as manifesting through polarity, as masculine and feminine, and that this same creative power lies in all people and functions through the interaction of the masculine and feminine. We neither value above the other, knowing each to be supportive to each other. We value sex as pleasure, as a symbol and embodiment of life, and as one of the sources of energies used in magical practice and religious worship. Is that evil?
Right. Yeah, sex magic is evil. Magic is evil. It's
Okay, is that
hijacking. It hijacks the will of other people.
sure? That's your belief. Sure, that's your belief. That's fine. That's fine.
How
You
does
think
it
it's
not?
evil.
Explain to me, how are you doing magic spells if you're not influencing the will of other people?
Well, no. So most witches, like white magic, you don't put spells on other people that don't consent to it.
Okay, so
But there is sex magic. It's the same as like tantra or I don't know. There's some like Hindu stuff and whatever, like tantric sex. I don't know. I don't even know if that's Hindu. Sorry if that was offensive, but
it is. I think so.
Okay, yeah, but
Hindu or Buddhist.
But okay, so you think sex magic is evil? That's fine. Do you think this is like bad? That the masculine? Do you think this is like harmful to men? This is hurting men. This is like this is having men and women be equal. Is some kind of like forced, I don't evil think society movement or whatever.
I don't think the idea of men and women being equal is like intentionally harmful, but I think it's not possible. I think it's delusional, and I think that forcing to implement it in society does cause real harm, in the same way that like socialism as a theory sounds really nice and the intentions might be really good, but every time you try to implement it, everybody dies and starves. Okay, so it's the same thing with feminism. When you say men and women should be equal, it's like they're not, though. And men have, like, we had patriarchy until technology for a reason. The only thing that makes you think equality is possible is technology. That's why they didn't write their bullshit Wiccan nonsense until 1974, because you need air conditioning and electricity to have feminism. Okay, that's why we didn't have it until it's a symptom of a luxurious society. Anytime a society becomes too prosperous, you do see feminism rise. Now, it's never gotten to this point because technology has never gotten to this point before, but it's just an illusion. It's just an illusion that you think that men and women are equal or can be equal. If you have to appeal to men for your rights, if you have to go to the men and say, men, you need to enforce our rights, then you're not equal. That's not
all
equal.
men have to do that. Everybody has to do that. Nobody's equal.
What do you mean? Yes, exactly.
We work together. Just because nobody is equal doesn't mean that only the strongest people.
You're saying we should work together, but that doesn't mean women should do the same things men should do. It doesn't mean women should be in positions of power. Those things don't follow. I said, women can and should contribute. Women can be and are important, but it doesn't mean that they deserve to be in positions of political power or religious power.
We're 1 hour, 30 minutes in. There's never a great time to end a debate. Unfortunately, we do have to get into closing statements so we can get to all the callers and so that we can get to all of the super chats. Now, just so you guys know, after closing statements, we do consider the debate done. Moderator will often ask a couple of questions before we move over to callers and before we move over to the super chats. Though we consider this portion of the debate closed after the closing statements are done, that doesn't mean that there still won't be back and forth, and there often is. Now, as you did the first opening, I'm going to give you the last word, Ghosty, on this. So I'm going to let Rachel close first, and I'll give you the last word in your close. Go ahead, Rachel, when you're ready.
Yeah, so this was actually fun and interesting. I actually am thankful to Jane that she came and did this. It's not easy when it's your first time and it's on a big channel, and she took on a big challenge. And so I have a lot of respect for her for that. And she was very like cordial and professional about the whole thing. So kudos to her for all that. That being said, I think that we kind of demonstrated here that her worldview is kind of inconsistent, a little bit incoherent, and that, you know, she couldn't demonstrate like a coherent pagan morality or any type of coherent system that she would like to see, or like she kind of just had a little bit of a critique of mine and then just hey, let everybody do what they want. If the sisters want to get married and the dude wants to be naked in the neighborhood, it's fine, that sort of thing. So I do think that I was able to demonstrate that, you know, feminist ideas come out of occult and pagan religions because of their goddess worship element, because of their rejection of Christianity and patriarchy. and that the only thing that has allowed feminism to become this default setting, this illusion that we all live under right now, is this technologically advanced world that allows women to think they're equal with men, they can do everything men can do, where in reality, if you put Jane on a construction site and told her she had to run a 200-pound jackhammer all day long for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, she's not going to be doing that, okay? She's not going to be running power lines, she's not going to be working in the timber industry, and she's not going to be like, building airplanes probably tomorrow. The fact that a few women can do some things that men can do does not indicate in any way that women should have power or authority over men. It does not demonstrate that the prior order of all of history was somehow inherently bad, immoral, or wrong. And I don't think she proved that I'm like some wild conspiracy theorist who's misrepresenting the occult or paganism and its role in feminism. So that's my closing.
All right. Appreciate the closing statement. Over to Jane. Go ahead when you're ready. Are you doing okay over there, Jane?
Oh, sorry. I was on mute. Okay. Yeah, so for my closing, sorry, I don't know. I guess I'm just gonna read some from some feminists and then some like Wiccan texts and stuff, just to like further trying to show like my beliefs and my moral values and why I don't think that this occult cohabitation with feminism is evil or hating of men, and why I do think it is a conspiratory view to have this like occult feminism perspective that Rachel has. So Mary Wollstonecraft, from The Vindication of Rights of Women in 1792, wrote, "Let there be no coercion established in society and the common law of gravity prevailing. The sexes will fall into their proper places. And now that more equitable laws are forming your citizens, marriage may become more sacred. Your young men may choose wives from the motives of affection, and your maidens allow love to root our vanity." I think that as a feminist, one of the very early feminists, saying that it is very beneficial for men and women. I don't think that's hating men at all. I don't think that's anti-marriage. I don't think that's anti-children. I think that's the complete opposite. And there's many more like texts like this throughout. I read one earlier from Katie Stannon saying that men and women, they're complementary to each other. So all these feminists were not man-hating women. They did not believe, not all of them believed in the dissolution of marriage. Many of them had many children. We also have to take in consideration when we think about the evils of abortion and birth control and stuff. I forget her name exactly right now, but Margaret Sanger. Her mother, her mother had 18 pregnancies and gave 11 births, and she was the one to like start the Planned Parenthood stuff and all that. I'm sure she had issues of her own, but these things weren't coming from a place of evilness or like free love and sex and power over men. I just don't think that is it. I don't think Rachel has proven that or displayed that in any way. And finally, I'm just going to read two of the tenets from the Wiccan principles. "We do not recognize any authoritarian hierarchy, but we do honor those who teach respect, those who share their greater knowledge and wisdom, and acknowledge those who have courageously given themselves in leadership." And then lastly, "Calling oneself a witch does not make a witch, but neither does heredity itself, nor the collecting of titles, degrees, and initiations. A witch seeks to control the forces within himself that make life possible in order to live wisely and well without harm to others and in harmony with nature." Seems that those are like the core fundamentalist beliefs of most spiritual religions. Wicca, paganism, spiritualism, all the mysticism, they're very peaceful, positive, all loving, all inclusive, just beliefs. There's nothing evil about them. Sorry, I really hate reading. Okay. And then lastly, my grandmother too. She's 89, and I'm her oldest granddaughter. She pulled me aside like one day recently, maybe like a year ago, and she was like, "You're so lucky to grow up in the way that you have so many opportunities and so many chances, and I really love seeing you like blossom into the person you are, and it's so great seeing like my granddaughters being able to live in this world. So, your grandmother might have a different perspective, but there were women who felt oppressed by the patriarchy, old ways of living." Yeah. That's it.
All right. Appreciate the closing statements. We have callers stacking up on the back lines. While they do that, just very quickly, I have some moderator notes. Just two very quick questions for both of you. We'll try to get through it very fast so that we can get to everything. First, over to you, Jane. Do you believe that magic works?
I do. Yeah. If you do it correctly, I do.
So,
Also, I just wanted to say thank you for having me on. That was part of my closing statement too. I forgot.
Yeah, no problem. So if magic works and you make a distinction between white magic and black magic, if you were to do a spell on your garden to make it grow better, would that be white magic or black magic?
To make it grow better. So I guess my intentions is what matters. So if my intentions is to, I believe you have a lot of responsibility when doing magic. I think doing it silly-willy is very dangerous, and I don't suggest that people or encourage people to just go practice and try magic and get crystals and things and just do things without.
Yeah, would it be white magic or black magic?
If my intentions are good, it would be white magic.
Okay, now let us assume for a second that there was heavy rainfall in your area, specifically over just your area, your home, and a few neighbors' homes. And your garden did indeed grow extremely well. But unfortunately, it caused an avalanche in your neighbor's yard, all of this rainfall, which buried his garden. Was that still white magic or is it now black magic?
It would be white magic that had a negative consequence. And usually when you do magic like this, you add protection spells and things like that to prevent negative consequences from happening like that.
So if the negative consequence happened, are you responsible for it?
Yes.
Okay, would you go over to your neighbor's house and pay them for the damage to their property?
Yeah, I would do what
you would?
If I caused something. If it was that devastating, I would do something.
Do you believe that there's ever been a witch who's ever existed who did a spell with unintended consequences and went and paid compensation to their victim? Honestly?
Who has?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, where? Have you ever met even one?
I mean,
have you ever had an unintended consequence to a spell of yours and then gone and paid compensation, been like, the reason that this happened is I did this fucking spell and fucked it up. My protection magic didn't work, and so I fucked your shit up. That's on me. It was my magics. Have you ever done that even once?
I mean, that's never happened. I've never caused anybody.
How do you know?
Because I know what spells I've never done anything to that level. So
well, I mean, how do you know about the unintended consequences?
There are some. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but unintended consequences are something to be taken very seriously, and that's why a really important part of spell casting is being very specific with your words and using your words very wisely and not allowing for any nuance or variables when you're spell casting.
So just a quick follow-up. In pagan land, if we had your kind of version of pagan world, would people need to offer compensation to other people for when their magical spells went awry?
If they could offer their help or their assistance, yeah. If they cause damage, then yeah. So
what if their spell unintentionally killed somebody? Could we give them the death penalty and perhaps burn them at the stake?
I wouldn't burn them at the stake, but a death
penalty, does it
penalty?
seem justified to if you did a spell and it led to the demise of like 4 people? Does the death penalty seem at that point justified, or at the very least life imprisonment?
you would have to be a pretty powerful witch. And
I agree, but it could happen, right?
if you're doing that on purpose, then definitely like the death penalty. If you do it
So
by
when
accident,
Christians burned
it's like
witches,
I guess it's
so-
like manslaughter.
So then by this logic, if Christians burned witches because they were able to demonstrate proof that the spell was hurting other people, they were totally justified, right? And you know that they were justified because magic exists, right?
Wait, what?
So if I could demonstrate, or Christians could demonstrate, that a Wiccan spell led to the demise of multiple people, maybe it killed their cows or something like this.
We didn't,
right?
though.
Yeah, but if you could demonstrate it, you would be
Okay.
justified in burning witches, right?
If they could prove that these witches had ill intent and were maliciously killing people and stuff, then sure. I think burning people at the stake is a bit like inhumane, but sure, for the time, I guess that's how they did things back then.
Okay, got it.
But they couldn't prove it. They weren't.
I just wanted to make sure. Now, there's some people in the chat who are wondering. They're like, "Can you moderator debate?" Yes, fucker, I can, because when it comes to the moderator Q&A, that's part of the show. It always has been on the Crucible. And if you don't like it, get the fuck out of here. How many times do I have to tell this to you people? Get the fuck out of here. The other 3,200 live viewers are not going to miss you. They're not going to miss you. Get the fuck out. Now, over to Rachel. I had a pointed question to you as well. What is for dinner?
Well, I was going to ask if now that
I don't care. I don't care about your woman proud.
Now
Now
the
over
debate
to
portion
the
is
chat.
over,
I'm
if
done
I
with your
can
proud.
notice
Your
that
mic's
your
muted. You're muted. Unbelievable.
I thought muting was bitch shit. Just
this sort of talking back, completely unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. Okay, so the real question that we get into, I didn't actually hear criticism when you guys were having kind of your back and forth. It was brought up. Democracy was brought up. And this sort of tiered choice of if you do no wrong or what is considered harm to somebody else. I didn't really get a clear picture as to why that's a bad model. Why would that be actually bad to just have a model for society not to invade or cause harm to somebody else, and that's the standard we go with?
Well, because first of all, to my knowledge, when I've debated these kind of like utilitarian or consequentialist people, they try to come up with some bizarre calculus to determine harm. And like kind of the exchange you just had with Jane it highlights why you can't always see the like unintended consequences of something and how that might cause harm. So, and what's harm to them might not be harm to us. And so you need something that's more objective than this like subjective idea of harm. So for example, you've made the argument before that if, a trans person wants to be called she when you don't believe that that's a biological female and you feel that you're being forced to lie, that could be causing you harm as a Christian. They don't see it that way, right? So it's like this idea.
Well, let me quickly follow up with you.
Jane doesn't think it's harmful to let the lesbian sisters get married.
But let me quickly follow up.
She doesn't think it's harm.
Yeah. Let me quickly follow up with this. Let us envision for a second that there was a society that the rapture happened and all Christians were gone. Okay, Christian society instantly crippled overnight, whatever remnants there are. And through, I don't know what hocus pocus, there are no more Christians. They don't exist. Absent Christian ethics, what mode could people go with other than consequentialism that would make sense?
Me?
Well, I mean, you could go with utilitarianism, but is that the same?
That's consequentialism, yeah.
Okay. Because some people say they're different, but I guess you couldn't, but that we don't live in that world. So, and if you had a world where there was no Christianity and for some reason we had no 10 commandments, we had no Christian universal morality, I guess you probably, I mean, that's why the pagan world did human sacrifice, right? Because it was kind of a free for all and it was kind of there was none of that. So I think you would just have like an Aztec or Viking society. And oddly, though, they did not go with consequentialism, did they? So I don't know. I couldn't tell you what would be the second best thing because I think they're all they would all lead to pretty bad stuff.
Okay. I appreciate both of you answering my questions very quickly.